Hi, good afternoon. My name is Attorney Michael Chambers Jr., and welcome to the Claim Game. Imagine you're driving home, minding your business, and someone slams into the back of your car. You're hurt, you're confused, you don't know what to do next, but the next 24 hours are critical as to what happens to the strength of your case. Today's episode is all about what you should and what you shouldn't do immediately after getting into a car accident. Now, the first mistakes people make after the crashes, they say too much. When you get involved in a car accident, it's kind of important to just take a minute and just exhale. It's your adrenaline's rushing. You've probably never been through this scenario before, and you're really confused. You get out the car and you want to be okay. You hope you're okay, and you tell everyone you're okay, but 9 out of 10 times you're not. The human body is not meant to go from moving in one direction at 30 or 40 miles an hour to a sudden stop, or to be at a sudden stop and then have a 3 or 4 or 5,000 pound vehicle slam into the side of it and jolt your body around. So initially, your initial feelings are, I'm okay, or you really want to be okay. But the effect on your body is not immediately felt by you, at least not in your brain yet, but your body is going through things. So the first things people mistake, they say, and it's a mistake that we can fix, but it's a mistake nonetheless, is telling a police officer, I'm fine. Because most people will actually encounter that in the next 3 to 5 hours after the accident, that's when the hurt and the pain and the soreness coming. Now, if you break a bone or an airbag comes out and you hit your head, obviously you're going to be in immediate pain. But it's the not so subtle pain, the pain from your neck jerking or the pain from being restrained by your seatbelt. Those are or pains or injuries that take place that aren't readily available or readily felt. But you wouldn't imagine how many times that I have a client that at the scene says they're fine. And then the next day or the next week or in the next month, we realize that they've got a torn rotator cuff or they've got a disc issue in their back. So again, saying you're fine is probably the biggest mistake that people make after an accident. So now you've been in the accident, you've taken a moment, you've remembered that you're fine, but you're not fine. So what are the next steps that you want to do? The most important thing probably at that point is to call 911. You want to call a police officer. A, you want to make sure the scene is secure, and B, you want to make sure you get documentation. A 911 phone call is really important in terms of documenting initial facts of the accident that are really important. Where it happened, when it happened, what does the other car look like? Can you read off a license plate number? It's really, really, really important to make sure you get a police officer's to document it, and then to come down to be an impartial third party to see where the cars are situated, to talk to both parties. Maybe the police officer can go and take a look at security footage if there's a traffic camera, and they can really document who is at fault for the accident. You would be surprised how many times two individuals at the scene will talk to each other. It's a really clear liability scenario. You leave the scene, and now that other person is calling your insurance company, and they've got a totally different recitation of facts as to what happened. And now you've been blindsided, but you didn't take the initial opportunity to dial the police, call 911 to make sure the police officers can come in and document the scene and what happens. The next thing you also might want to do in that scenario is, if you're safe, if the cars are in a safe area, can you get out and take some pictures to document where the accident happened? Can you kind of document the positioning of the cars, the damage to your vehicle, the damage to the other person's vehicle? Maybe you get a license plate number. Again, you would be surprised how many times someone would get out of the car and ask you, are you doing okay? You'll say, I'm fine, which you shouldn't. And then they'll get back in their car and they'll pull off. And now if you haven't taken a picture of their license plate, you are now left to kind of think and remember, what was the license plate? Was it a Nissan? Was it a Camry? Was it white or was it really silver? So getting out and taking some pictures of the damages to the car and of the scene are really important, just as important right after calling 911 and making sure a police officer gets you documented as to what happened. Probably as important as those steps is to make sure you are getting checked out. As I said, your body is not meant to go through car accidents. getting violently thrown in your car or going from a fast speed to a sudden stop jerks your body, your neck, your back, your shoulders, your knees, airbags get deployed. You really, really, really need to get checked out. At the very least, you should take the opportunity for the EMTs who arrive on the scene to let them give you a thorough examination to see what's going on. And unfortunately, as I said before, that initial adrenaline rush, you may not have a full understanding as to what's going on in your body, but you should at least let the EMTs check you out. If you feel any type of pain anywhere, I would always recommend taking an ambulance and getting checked out the hospital. Those are the professionals. They have the tools, they have the scans. You don't want to be the person that has a bump on your head and says, I think I'm fine. And then 3 days later, you're getting readmitted because there's some type of internal bleed, there's a concussion, something that wasn't properly documented and you weren't properly treated. Look, I'm a personal injury attorney and I get a third of all the recovery in an accident. So of course I want you to get medically checked out because it helps to document your injuries and it can raise the value. And going to the ER is a bigger bill than going to the urgent care. But most importantly, there's no amount of money that's going to replace you being okay. You want to, whatever we do, there's no amount of money is going to be able to help you get back your physical well-being. So if you miss something in the first 12 to 18 hours and it's something serious, it's a serious injury, or it could have been prevented, or it could have been better, I would hate to see that happen to anyone. So you always want to get checked out and let a medical professional do a good thorough once over. And if they need to do a scan or a CT scan or an MRI or x-rays to figure out what's really going on in your body, you need to give them the opportunity to do so. So get your medical treatment and get seen by a professional. At the best case scenario, if you're hurting on the scene, is to get into ambulance and go to the hospital. We know how expensive ambulance bills are. So maybe say to the police officer, hey, I'm feeling up to getting to the ambulance or to the hospital by myself. I don't need to get a $1,000 or $1,500 ambulance bill. So you take the opportunity, you have a friend or family member drive you to the hospital, or if you can take yourself directly after, or even worst case scenario, the following day. If it's late, some people have to pick their children up. Accidents don't happen at convenient times, right? It's not in this stereo bubble. So I get it. You've got to get to work, or your kids are in daycare. And I know if you're like me, my kids are ahead of everything else. So I'm going to put personal pain down and make sure my children get picked up from school. You don't want them sitting there. You don't want them scared. You don't want them at the bus stop. But ultimately, you have to pivot back to yourself. Go get checked out by those doctors or primary care physician. Always get evaluated, fully evaluated by a medical professional. Because even if they say you're perfectly fine, that's good too. But now after an accident, sometimes your gut and knee-jerk reaction is to just say, I'm so sorry, right? Because you are sorry. Even if the accident's not your fault, most reasonable, good people will say, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, or how are you feeling? How are you hurting? The other person might be crying. They might be upset. But believe it or not, your act of kindness can be used against you. So you got to be really careful about apologizing, or at least acknowledging what you're apologizing for. You can talk to the other person in the accident. You can see if they're okay. If they're injured and they need immediate help, I would 100% advocate you calling and getting help for them. But in terms of saying, I'm sorry, or it was my fault, that's not for you to decide at that exact moment. Let's see what's happening around us. Maybe there's a video camera that picked up exactly what happened and who really ran the red light. Maybe there's a pedestrian that saw the entire accident. You don't want to say things that included in the police report that may have a detrimental effect on evaluating liability, because oftentimes you take responsibility because unwillingly or unknowingly, by just apologizing to someone because of how they feel, but you actually did nothing wrong in this scenario. So be careful with your words and apologizing when in fact you may have not done anything wrong. Another big mistake we make, social media. Everybody wants to post on social media. You want to make a post, you want to document and show people, you want to be the next Waterbury's Nuts. Shout out to my guy Waterbury's Nuts, who's very supportive of the law firm, our Instagram and Facebook. That's not your job. You would be surprised. Insurance companies are very savvy. So they will go to people's Instagrams and Facebook and TikTok pages if they can find them, and they will look up to see if you posted anything about the accident. They will look up to see if you're posting and really upset and jumping around and wanting to cause harm and cursing because it makes you look bad after an accident. And they will also look up to see how well you're doing immediately after the accident. If you get into a bad accident on Thursday and then you're posting a video Saturday water skiing, and then 9 months from now I'm filing a demand and I'm saying how this accident affected your life and how you were so hurt and that you were in bed for a week or 10 days and couldn't do anything. And then they say, Attorney Chambers, that's not what social media says. Your client 2 days after was out living his best life water skiing. So be careful. It is a free world, a free country, and free speech. But free speech will cost you. So keep your social media accounts saved. Don't start accepting random followers because oftentimes it is insurance companies and their investigators sneaking into your DMs. Well, people often want to know, when is it appropriate to call an attorney? And it's never a bad time to call your attorney when you're involved in a car accident. And I tip my hat to insurance companies who've kind of demonized personal injury attorneys and calling an attorney. And I say to people, I mean, if you had a toothache, you wouldn't hesitate and no one would judge you for calling a dentist, right? Because that's what they do and that's their expertise. So why, if you've never been in a car accident and you don't understand the process, why is it a negative thing or a negative connotation, or excuse me, a negative connotation if you call an attorney? We're the experts. We're the ones that are going to be able to guide you through the process. We're going to be the ones that are able to help you get a rent a car. We're going to be the ones that help you to make sure the ambulance bill doesn't hit your credit report. We're going to be the ones that are going to help you if you don't have health insurance to make sure you get treatment. We're the ones going to help you to point you towards treatment when you can't get into your primary care physician for a week or two. There's nothing wrong with calling an attorney, and you cannot call an attorney too soon. Now, I've had clients who've had multiple accidents, and some of them will literally call me from the ambulance stretcher. It's a little sketchy in some people's mind, and sometimes they will document that in your hospital records, and that can make you look bad. So yes, my past clients, I'm thankful that you think of me immediately. You remember everything we talked about, and you're trying to get me involved from the very beginning, but maybe not from the stretcher. Maybe you can wait at least until you get to a hospital room. But all jokes aside, you just want to make sure you speak to an attorney prior to speaking to any insurance personnel, whether it be your insurance or the other party's insurance, because all calls are monitored and recorded. And your insurance company is there to help you and only wants the best from you up until the point that they find out that the other driver doesn't have insurance and now you're making a claim against your own insurance. All of that information that they got in the beginning is now going to be used for them to try to do what they do, which is not pay out as much money as possible. I can't fault insurance companies. They're in the business of making money. And the way that they make money is by paying out the least amount of money possible. So it is in their best interest. It is their SOPs. It is their practice to try to limit the amount of money they pay out. And the way they do that is by getting information that may not be shown in the best light or possibly kind of used against you. So again, telling an insurance person in the first day after an accident, I'm fine, is not necessarily going to be the best thing for you to say to them. Let me talk to them. Let my office and staff talk to them. You may talk to an insurance adjuster on the day one, and you may say, I have a headache, and you may say my back ache, and you may say my knee hurts. And then 2 days later, your shoulder starts hurting, and that shoulder ends up being a torn rotator cuff. Well, they may try to say to you, well, Mr. Smith, when you called us on day 2, you didn't mention your shoulder. If you forget to mention your shoulder, to them, that means it may not have happened, or something might have happened between when you called and when you reported it that had nothing to do with the accident. If I don't mention the shoulder, that's my fault. That's my staff. That's a lack of notation on my fault. So you can kind of see why it's better for us to call instead of you. We're a buffer to protect you, to make sure you don't say something that's eventually going to hurt your case or diminish the value of your case in the long run. All right, so to wrap up what we learned today, it kind of feels like Sesame Street, right? Today's episode is sponsored by the number 24. That is the first 24 hours of your accident. And you want to be careful the things you do, you say, because all of those things matter. The first thing I want you all to remember is immediately after an accident is what? Call 911. You want to call the police. You want to make sure it's documented. You want everyone to know where you are, where it happened, dates, times. All of those things are going to matter 9 months to a year from now when we're settling your case. 2, you want to remember to say less, right? It's important to take a minute to relax. Don't talk to people too much about the accident immediately or say things like, I'm fine, I'm not hurt, I don't hurt, because as I said, remember, you may not know the full extent and the impact of that collision for a day or two after, when the soreness and the pain really kicks in. 3, don't admit fault. Don't admit fault either intentionally or unintentionally. You might feel sorry for someone because they're hurting or they're crying or they're upset, but you don't need to apologize for something that you're not wrong about or you're not at fault for, because that act of kindness may be used against you. I'm attorney Michael Chambers Jr. Thanks for joining us on today's podcast. We hope that you join us soon. Next podcast topic is, I don't know yet, but when we figure it out, we'll be back. You can always reach us, Instagram, mchamberslaw, CT Bowtie Lawyer. If you have questions, if you have problems, we're always here to help. I tell my clients at the end of every lawsuit, I hope I never see you again. Why is that? It's one of the worst days of your life, and we're here to help you through those bad problems. And after you're done, hopefully we see you have a drink, or we see you in the mall shopping, but in another car accident, we hope it doesn't happen. We'll join you the next episode, The Claim Game, where we pull back the curtains as to what and how to get maximum compensation for your accidents.